I hope I live long enough to see a couple of recessions in this country. It's the nature of capitalism to periodically have recessions. People overshoot. So it isn't the end of the world.
All right, he's got that right. We're back with our panel, Westbury, Brown, and Jerry Bowyer. So, John Brown, welcome back. Brian Westbury said we have nothing to fear but fear itself, essentially, if I may paraphrase.
That's right.
John Brown, I just want you to comment on what I call the clogging up of commercial paper and LIBOR, and also the inverted yield curve, which strikes me as requiring more Fed attention.
Well, I think I know one of those clogging. It's really a credit crunch, not a liquidity. It's liquidity that caused the problem in the first place. But today's Fed announcement was baffling, because it was truly baffling to hear perhaps the most powerful Fed Reserve Bank in the world say that it was checkmated, that it couldn't do anything, and that it's been backed into a corner by the massive Greenspan liquidity boom, which is causing the problem of today, which is a credit crisis, not a liquidity crisis.
But right now, I get confused in these programs. I have to work it out simply. Is the Fed too tight or too loose?
Well, the Fed's far too tight. Interest rates should be cut by 200 to 300
Brian Westbury, you think
points.
the Fed is too loose, is that right?
I definitely think the Fed is too loose today, and you can see that in gold and oil and commodity prices. There's massive amounts of liquidity around the world. Just happens to be in the hands of Abu Dhabi and the Singapore Sovereign Debt Fund. That's where the capital is coming into our banking system. The bankers that made subprime loans are losing capital.
All right, hang on a second.
So now they're having to sell pieces of their institutions.
Jerry Bowyer, who's right here? Are we too loose or are we too tight? I am confused. I like the Abu Dhabi story. Yes. I like the Singapore sling. I just don't know who's right. Brian's on one side, John Brown's on the other. Jerry, I need you to decide the whole issue.
No more Singapore slings. Remember that the economy's like a drunk.
Oh, that's right. We can't use that. That metaphor was from earlier in the program.
Exactly. So we're in the sobriety block now.
And I haven't had a drink in almost 13 years. Anyway, go ahead. Who's right and who's wrong here?
I'm having trouble figuring out John Brown, because back when it was 5 1/4, he said it was way too loose, and now it's 4 1/4 and it's way too tight.
Well, Jerry, that was because at that time we were facing an inflation risk, not a recession risk. And now we're facing a very severe recession risk.
Brian Westbury thinks there's an inflation risk. Brian Westbury thinks there's an inflation risk. Go ahead, Brian.
There is an inflation risk. We've got both. That's why the Fed's in a corner. The Fed can do nothing.
Here's the
listen
story,
to you
John.
3 months ago, they'd be in a much worse corner, wouldn't they?
Yeah,
no, because the worst thing of all these evils, a weak currency, inflation, and recession. The worst thing is recession. And if the Fed doesn't get his interest rates down dramatically, as has been suggested by at least one of your commentators, we're going to end by morphing a recession into a depression.
In July,
and that's bad for everyone.
Too high.
Brian Westbury, come back to you. This is a tough crowd to get a word at edgewise, but you and I are going to carve it up. Brian, if you could wave a magic wand, what would your best target be for the Federal Reserve? Best target.
Right now, I believe 6% Fed funds is a neutral rate.
That's neutral. We're at 4 1/4 as of today.
That's right.
How would that play with commercial paper, LIBOR, inverted? How would that play if they raise the rate? Let's put the board. Fed funds and adjustable rate mortgages. Let's put that up here.
Let's put it.
ARM rates are directly tied to the Fed funds rate. Let's get this thing up. Here it comes. ARMs versus Fed funds. If you're going to take a funds rate up to 6%, that means the adjustable rate mortgage is going to go up another really 200 basis points. What do you think that'll do to not only housing and neighborhoods and incomes, but to the economy, Brian?
Well, I don't think it will be a great thing for all loans, but don't forget inflation next month. When we get the November CPI, we're going to have 4% year-over-year inflation. So that's only 2% real rates. I mean, these interest rates are not high today. Our problem is not that the Fed is too tight.
Last go around. John Brown, there are more rate cuts coming. One word, yes or no?
I sincerely hope so. And I expect
Jerry
there'll be too little,
more
too late.
rates coming, yes or no?
Yes.
More rate cuts?
Yes.
All right. Brian Westbury, more rate cuts coming?
After reading that statement today, I don't think the Fed knows exactly what's going to happen. I'd have to say they're going to cut rates again.
Thank you. Westbury, Brown, and Bowyer, 3 first-rate intellects. Gentlemen, thank you ever so much. Up next, my last word. We'll be right back.